The most polarizing player on the San Antonio Spurs, have seen his haters and what they have said, and he is changing all of that. Right now, we break that down here on Spurs Digest with your host, Keenan Warner. And right now, we're on a chase for 1,000 before the season starts. Right now, over 500. We appreciate everyone who has subscribed. And if you haven't, let's get this here to 1,000 before the NBA season takes place. But speaking of that NBA season, the league and the haters have been put on notice. If you still don't know what is going on with Keldon Johnson and the Spurs, you need to catch up and read the report. We are going to get into what he is saying. Keldon Johnson, it appears, has been putting in work this offseason, looking completely transformed in new training videos, courtesy of Dusty Garcia. So, I do not have the training videos here, but what I do have is a picture of him before. Not that he was ever an out-of-shape man, but you see, he's not as defined as what you see right there. The muscle tones there, you can see it slimmer in his face. The work ethics that in the workouts that he's been doing has been high energy. And right here it shows more explosive movements, focused on his athleticism and his burst. Things that were talked about, he might not be able to translate at the next level. We'll get into that more in just a moment. More quickness, explosiveness, physically to be playing better on the defensive end. His lateral quickness, been an issue in the past. Obviously, with him being a smaller forward, he's going to see a lot of guards. You're going to see a lot of the top flight and talent in the league, and this league is so guard dominant. You need to be quick. You need to be agile to take a lot of these guys out. And with some lapses mentally, we've seen that. Obviously, that's what led him to being benched last season. It seems like he's addressing the physical aspect of his defensive ability. It remains to be seen if he can improve the mental side. Absolutely. Another look at this man. Look at him. He is in shape. He is getting there. He understands. He's heard what you guys have said. But what we need to do real quick before we break down, obviously, what this season's going to look like, we need to remember what Keldon Johnson is. Sometimes we talk about this man as if he was supposed to be a number 1 overall pick, this just surefire, something like he wasn't supposed to be that coming out of the draft. He was the 29th pick. He had the physical tools, athleticism early at Kentucky, cooled off later. Scouts recognized the potential there. He's a downhill scoring. He definitely competes defensively, even though there's the mental lapses, even though his body doesn't always have the physical attributes to it. 6'6", 216. We've seen him kind of bounce between weights. His comparison was Miles Bridges. Okay. And his defensive outlook. Let's look at this. This is draft time. This is just when he was drafted. Johnson has the body to effectively match up with guards and wings. Yes, he is. He is 6'6". Obviously, the athleticism was a little bit there. Always plays with a competitive edge and sense of intensity. He doesn't always make threes. However, his focus can fade. That is very true. We have seen that. And he wasn't a defensive playmaker, just totaling 28 steals, 6 blocks, and 37 games. Potential to be a serviceable defender, but he'll need to be coached up. Okay, who is a better coach than Gregg Popovich? Of course, and we understand that he didn't do the greatest going last year, but obviously he was ascending up until that point. Here, his projected role coming in was a backup wing. A backup wing. And you know what he was doing 2 years ago? Averaging 22 and leading the team in scoring. But there have been changes. It is difficult when things change. Right here, a respected development coach who has worked with many of the league's top players once shared that one of the biggest adjustments for players have to make in their career is going from being, quote-unquote, the man, wherever they came from before they were rookies, to becoming a machine in the machine known as an NBA team. And this is exactly what he was. You have to think he came in as a prodigy. He was one of the best players on this Kentucky team. It was him. It was Tyler Hero, a couple others as well. They went 30-7. They ended up getting to the Elite Eight and losing in the Elite Eight that year, his last season there. But obviously, he's not on a great San Antonio Spurs team. He's playing. He's vying for playing. He's minutes. He goes overseas with Pop in 2021. He impresses there, and then he continues to grow and grow. And then 2 years ago, we see him averaging 22 points a game alongside Devin Vassell, who was putting up, I think, around 17 to 18 points a game in that season. And you know what happens? On that team, he's like the number one option. And you know what happens? This guy named Victor Wembanyama comes in. Okay, things are going to change for you. Devin Vassell takes a leap. Victor Wembanyama comes in. And this is what you get from Keldon Johnson. Last year, about 16 points a game, obviously a dip there. His rebounds and assists stayed pretty similar to what he had the year prior. A little bit of a change there. Shot 45% from the floor, 35% from three. Wasn't great. He wasn't great. I understand that he wasn't great, and obviously he got reduced to a bench role. But that could be the best thing for him, being on the bench and being part of a second unit. When you don't have to worry about, okay, so we got Wemby, we got Chris Paul, we got Vassell, we got Sochan, we got Barnes. That's your starting five. Paul, Vassell, Barnes, Sochan, Wemby. Okay, that's your starting five. That team works well together. And then off the bench, it's you and Stephon Castle get to run your entire unit together? That could be your second lineup? I don't understand what there's not to like about this. Think about it. So in Keldon Johnson's case, since the arrival of Wemby and the surge of Devin Vassell, as I just mentioned, he had to adjust from being the man. This is what this report is saying here in this article. In San Antonio to now coming off the bench and contributing in different way. That's not to say that offensive sets don't flow through him anymore. In fact, he's asked to provide the scoring punch and energy off the bench in a similar way that Manu Ginobili did during the team's dynasty years. And the thing with Keldon Johnson is he's got the promise and he's got the offensive prowess to do it, and he's heard the defensive problems. So what is he doing? He's trying to address that in the offseason. Obviously, it's a mentality thing now, but when you have the great eraser and the great equalizer in the back in Wemby, things can be adjusted. And then you've got a guy in Stephon Castle who just breeds hustle, energy, and work. Defensive tenacity, that is something that he strives and he's a success in. Chris Paul, another guy who's made many all-defensive teams, a guy who has a high defensive motor. He is another person who can help mold Keldon Johnson into being something. We have to remember, he's only 24. He is young. He was a one-year college player, and he came into the league, and now he's still in learning process. That's okay. That is A-okay for him to still be learning, but sometimes I feel we want to just speed up the trajectory of these guys, and based off of one season that was subpar for him, off the expectations that he risen for himself, we're now going to say that, he needs to be off the team, he's not good enough. I just don't get it. I don't get it. He hasn't done anything too bad. Johnson has shown significant growth and potential since entering the league, but for the first time last season, his scoring average agrees. Unforgiving Spurs fans seem to turn on Johnson, not showing any consideration for the fact that he was playing fewer minutes and that his overall contributions and rebounds and assists remained solid. Playing less minutes, and when your game is predicated around being, obviously he gets to the basket, he can shoot threes, he's an athletic guard that uses his physical tools, and Wemby changes the entire conversation. That's okay though. You have to learn to play around him, and yes, it doesn't happen easy. The Spurs only still won 22 games last season. They're going to have to keep adjusting and keep growing, but to think that this man cannot be a piece of that is crazy. He absolutely can be a piece to the puzzle for this roster. Last, offense has never been an issue with him. In fact, physically and finishing ability have long been strengths. As we know, getting to the basket's a little different when you got a 7'4" guy who can be in the paint, obviously outside of the paint. With his ability to draw contact around the basket with more explosive base, could do wonders for his downhill attacking game. It's something he went away from too often last season. The added speed could help him get to the basket at will, something that will be needed in his second unit. This guy can be the best player in the second unit. As long as we understand now that Keldon Johnson doesn't need to be the second star to Wemby, then he's fine in his role and he is easily a piece for this roster. There's a reason why he's always in trades. If they didn't want him, he wouldn't be talked about in these trades. People tried to throw Tyler Hero in a bunch of trades for Miami. A lot of people said no because they didn't want Tyler Hero. But the Heat wanted to move off because that was the piece. Contractually it worked. And just because that's like, oh, we could move off of this guy. We don't really need it. They now have Devontae Graham to kind of compare. Like they have Jimmy Butler. They have a guy that does a lot of the same things. But Tyler Hero was talked about being moved because they didn't want him on the roster. They didn't feel like he needed to be there. Keldon Johnson's a piece that people want, like when Lonzo was getting traded. I know people talked bad about Lonzo when he was in LA, but the Pelicans were like, yeah, no, we want him. You guys can keep Kuzma. We want Lonzo. And what did Lonzo turn into? A very, very good three-point shooter who was great. The only problem with him is injuries. I understand that these things happen to players and they happen like where they get a bad rep here, a bad rep there, but there's no reason for Keldon Johnson to get a bad rep. He is a 24-year-old who is still developing his game here in the NBA. He is adjusting to a role, as does everyone have to, and now that he has the offseason, you can see that he cares about the sport. He will continue to care, continue to grow. We'll see if he can make the mental adjustments that he needs, along with the physical abilities that he is adjusting right now. Let me know in the comments if you think Keldon Johnson is fit for this roster, as I do. I think Keldon Johnson just needs to find his spot, and once he does, he will be a very viable piece for this roster. Let me know in the comments if you think the same. This has been Spurs Digest with Keenan Warner, and I will see all of you guys very soon.